Hello, I'm Sean Lim, and welcome to After 10. President Park Geun-hye has returned from her overseas trip to Southeast Asia, where she attended a series of summits and high-level one-on-one meetings. On tonight's After 10, we meet with an expert to tell us what to expect from the region. President Park Geun-hye's Asia-Pacific sales diplomacy started with her attendance at the APEC Summit.
혁신만이 새로운 성장 동력을 끊임없이 창출하며 일자리를 만들어 나갈 수 있습니다. 그렇기 때문에 창조 경제에는 성장의 한계가 없고 지속 가능한 성장을 달성할 수 있습니다. 저는 개도국의 창조 경제 수요를 기반으로 혁신과 개발 모델을 전수하고 영내 동반 성장을 함께 실현해 나가기를 기대합니다.
At the APEC Summit, the president promoted the strengths of a creative economy and the importance of trade liberalization. After arriving in Brunei, the 10 leaders of ASEAN discussed plans for cooperation on shared growth. For her last stop in celebration of 40 years of diplomatic relations, President Park made a state visit to Indonesia. The two nations' leaders spoke about their shared vision of laying a foundation for a cooperative economy. Well, Professor Lee, thanks so much for joining us tonight on After 10.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
Well, President Park started her overseas trip this time over at the APEC CEO Summit, and her major point was that the global economic crisis was not a financial crisis, but more of an innovation crisis. Do you think she was on point?
Yes, I think in a way I agree with her because although the economic depression was created by the financial crisis, which was started in the United States, that was a triggering point. But in order to save the world economy from the recession, we have to make efforts. And many countries have made fiscal efforts and also the monetary efforts. And as President Park mentioned, those policy efforts are only short-lived. Impact of those policies is very short-term. In the long pull, without continuous technological progress, it is virtually impossible to sustain the economic growth. And that argument is very well based theoretically.
So who is dragging the cart in terms of this innovation crisis? Asia as a whole seems to be innovating quite rapidly. Or are there what areas in innovation are we lacking then?
Well, innovation can be everywhere. It's not just the Asian countries, but also the advanced economies in North America or Europe. They can also initiate the innovations. Like we all know that Apple and all IT businesses, which is very successful in the United States, they are the cases of innovations. And if the innovations do not continue, the countries can lose the momentum for the economic growth.
Well, the APEC conference ended with a declaration that really cemented the theme of Asia being the engine of global growth. What key agreements should we take note of from this declaration?
Well, this declaration emphasized the expansion of the free trade among the countries within the region or the members of APEC. And I believe increasing the opportunities for trade is beneficial for many countries. But there is a problem with that because the benefit of trade is not evenly distributed among the countries. So some countries can gain a lot, whereas other countries will gain less. Even if they are not losing, if they get less, they may not be happy with that. And also, if you take a look at a country, one country at a time, within a country, there are a group of people who gain a lot from trade. But actually, there are people who are losing from expanding the trade. For example, if we think about the rice market in Korea, if we open the rice market, all the rice consumers benefit, but the rice farmers will have a difficult time. So government, in order to prepare for that better opportunities for trade, each country should be prepared so that they can reallocate the benefit from trade to their people so that they can reduce the resistance against the free trade.
Well, over the years, Korea certainly enlarged its voice on the global stage, and President Park Geun-hye inherits this podium. What kind of message do you think she made that resonated well with the international leaders?
Well, as I just said, her argument is very soundly based on the economic theories. So I think her argument is hardly disputable. So I believe that all ASEAN leaders must have received it very well. And the problem is, only the problem is how to do it. And President Park even suggested about how to do it. And she mentioned that we should remove obstacles to innovations, like regulatory obstacles and the financial obstacles, and also the obstacles to education and obstacles to trade. And I all agree with that. But I think she missed one important point. Her argument reminds a lot of Joseph Schumpeter's creative destruction. Innovation means creation of new things, which means that old things shouldn't stand in the way of creation of the new things. So if the small privileged group stand in the way to protect their interest, then innovation is hard to come by. So the argument that was heated in Korean presidential election, which is the economic democracy, is very closely related to the issue. So if she add that extra point, then it can be more doable, and I think it can be a more realistic plan.
Well, President Obama wasn't able to attend these meetings due to issues in the domestic political sphere, namely the U.S. shutdown and the debt ceiling. Do you think the absence of the U.S. president alter the dynamics of these talks over in Southeast Asia?
Well, absolutely. I think the United States has a large stake in Asia because the center of gravity is moving toward Asia from Europe and North America. So President Obama naturally wants to strengthen the relationship with the Asian countries. However, because of that unexpected government shutdown, he was not able to join APEC meetings. So the General Secretary of China, Xi Jinping, took the stage. And he played major role in the meetings. And also the Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, also had a lot more room to kind of show off Russian influence. And also, the Korean president, Park Geun-hye, also was able to kind of play more important, significant role because American President Barack Obama was absent from the meeting.
So it opened the door for other players to have a greater voice and say in the dialogue. At the summit, President Park was expected by some to mention something about the Korean participation in the Trans-Pacific Partnership, but there weren't any comments about that. What's behind that situation?
That has to do with the absence of President Barack Obama from the APEC meetings, because this Trans-Pacific Partnership was initiated by United States. So it is a kind of building a bloc economy in the Asia-Pacific area led by United States. However, China is proposing to form alternative regional economic bloc, which is called the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. That CREP is excluding all the American side of the participants of the TPP. So you can see what they are getting at, where they are getting at, right? Korea is squeezed in between this TPP and RCEP. So far, the Korea has not declared to participate in any actively, but this time it was told that the President Park was going to announce that the Korea is going to participate in TPP, but because the initiator of that plan didn't participate in the meeting, so Park Geun-hye didn't have to do it. And another most serious factor is that if we join TPP, as was the case with the FTA with the United States, there are pros and cons in Korea. So we have to talk about that, and we have to see what is the net benefit of participating in that kind of economic bloc and opening the economy in that context.
Well, after the APEC summit, President Park traveled over to Brunei for the ASEAN +3 meeting. What stood out about her participation there?
I guess she wanted to talk to the leaders of the ASEAN countries, and according to the press, she was pursuing the sales diplomacy, which I guess means that the President Park was making efforts in a diplomatic way to enlarge the economic opportunities of Korean businesses and so on.
And so you mentioned sales diplomacy. What does that essentially mean as a policy statement?
Well, if it comes to a huge investment project initiated by a government, individual businesses may not be able to get an adequate access to that project. So it should be approached at the government level. So President Park, these ASEAN countries are emerging economies, so they have a lot of plans to make a huge investment constructing their infrastructure. So if the Korean businesses can participate in those construction of the infrastructure, it would be beneficial to Korean businesses.
Well, let's talk about another meeting that happened during the same period of time, the East Asia Summit. What's the main point of the East Asia Summit? How does that differ from the APEC and the ASEAN +3?
Well, it seems a little bit complicated. There is ASEAN, and there is ASEAN +3, and there is East Asian Summit, and also there is APEC, right? And ASEAN is the most compact, small group of Southeast Asian countries. And they used to meet together and try to share their common interests and concerns. And later on, 3 East Asian countries joined, China, Japan, Korea. So that became ASEAN +3. And later on, the East Asia summits include all these ASEAN +3 and more countries like India, United States, Russia, Australia, and so on. Right? So that became East Asia Summit. So that meeting is right after the ASEAN +3 happens.
Korea and Indonesia are celebrating 40 years of diplomatic relations. Indonesia is a G20 member country as the 4th most populated nation in the world. Because having a global production base and a global market has unlimited potential, the United States, China, and Japan are expanding their levels of economic cooperation. During President Park's state visit to Indonesia, both nations were able to create a firm foundation for a comprehensive economic partnership.
우리 두 정상은 2020년까지 양국의 교역 목표액 1,000억 불을 달성하기 위해 함께 노력해 나가기로 하였습니다.
So Indonesia is the largest economy in the ASEAN bloc. Why is aside from its size, why is Indonesia so important to Korea, and why? What were the major initiatives that President Park wanted to take to her state visit there?
Well, actually, Indonesia is one of the strongest emerging economy. And as you just mentioned, because of the huge population, it means that the Indonesia can be a potentially very large market for an economy. So, so in that respect, it is very important. And also, Indonesia has abundance of natural resources. And Korea is a resource poor economy. So we have some kind of complementarity in that dimension too. And already as the Indonesian economy is emerging, the labor cost in Indonesia becomes more expensive than what it used to be. We all experienced that in China. So at the first stage, the small and medium-sized businesses, which uses labor-intensive technology, goes there and make investment, build factory, and do the production using the cheap labor. But now that the labor is not that cheap anymore, we have to change the pattern of foreign direct investment in that country. So, for example, already the POSCO made investments up to like $6 billion over the last 2 years. And also there's a huge, the retail company, Lotte Mart, is already there and opened more than 30 stores there. So, for example, there's the scene is changing. So, in order to facilitate further relationship with Indonesia, I guess there is some input is necessary at the diplomatic level. And in addition to that, this is the anniversary of this is the 40th anniversary of diplomatic relationship between Korea and Indonesia. So it has also special meaning too.
And speaking of agreements, Korea is transitioning from a strategic partnership established in 2006 with Indonesia to a comprehensive economic partnership. What is the difference between the two?
Well, strategic partnership is the partnership about the selected issues on which both countries share the common interest. So the area of cooperation is very selective. However, the comprehensive economic partnership is comprehensive. Everything is, in principle, should be open among the partnership countries. So some say that the comprehensive economic partnership is not much different from free trade agreement.
So it's just almost the last step before a formal FTA?
I guess so, yes.
So if the comprehensive economic partnership is signed, what will change in our relations with Indonesia?
We will be able to cooperate with Indonesia in many dimensions, like developing the natural resources. And also we can provide more help to Indonesia too. The KOICA is the Korean ODA agency, and the very first for the office abroad established by KOICA was in Indonesia. So Indonesia is a kind of dual economy so far. So some part of the economy is booming, but still there are huge undeveloped rural areas. So we can help them out in that dimension too. And the president of Indonesia actually asked President Park for help in that dimension. He specifically mentioned about the Semaul Undong of Korea, so that the Indonesian can import that experience, so that they can implant that kind of institution to the rural villages of Indonesia.
So, do you think President Park really was able to achieve her goals from her overseas trip?
Well, I do not know the details of the talks between the summits, so I'm not in position and make a judgment on that. But my impression is that she was rather building a ground for the further cooperation between Korea and the ASEAN countries, because it takes a long time and the continuous efforts to bring about specific results. And we all know that Korea has not been made consistent effort to build better relationship with ASEAN countries so far. We are much focused on relationship with the United States and European countries and China and Japan. But we are not making that much effort with less developed economies.
So, speaking of the difference in the way Korea approaches relations with Western advanced economies and countries versus Southeast Asia, look, in the future, how should we approach this region differently?
Well, Korea has a very unique experience of transforming itself from one of the poorest economy to a solid middle-income economy. So with that experience, I think we can approach the emerging economies so that we can share our experiences and helping them to speed up their process of economic development. And also, Korean businesses will have more opportunities in those markets and regions. So this will be a bilaterally beneficial relationship if we can pursue the efforts in that kind of direction.
So unlike Korea-U.S. relations, Korea-China relations, or even G20 relations, how does an Asia-Pacific diplomatic approach differ?
Well, obviously, China, United States, and other members in G20 are mostly large countries and advanced economies. So for Korea, it would be very difficult to play a leading role in that context. However, when it comes to ASEAN +3 or East Asia Summit, the members are not only the advanced economies, but also the middle-income countries and emerging economies. So because Korea is in the middle, Korea is in a better position to play a more significant role. And that's exactly what President Park Geun-hye did at the APEC meetings this time.
So it sounds like a very excellent and successful approach so far.
I guess so.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us here.
Thank you.
And that does it for us tonight on After 10. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.